I call this dream Silent No More because I find myself listening to quite a lot of streams to catch up, and I haven't actually even finished watching all of them, but I think it would be a good idea to tell you as much as I can of my feelings and opinions about what I have seen so far before I completely forget about it. And if they are so forgettable, why do I even bother telling you? The thing is, I don't know. I think they may be significant, or it's just more noise in an increasingly vacuous field of um, political and religious debate, perhaps, or things are genuinely hotting up, and we're finally going to get the um, a real sense of urgency that I think we ought to feel about where things are going. As I've been saying before, I think theology is the final frontier of political discourse, because the final frontier is about which legal system to adopt. And I'm saying, in the hope of making it easy for you all, is to say that there is a God given legal system and one that we could be making up for ourselves. But why stick to the current system when it has gone wrong in so many ways? So I was listening to Michael Lofton on reason and theology. He's a Catholic. I was just thinking to myself that he might be the Michael Boris kind of Catholic, the angry kind of Catholic, wondering what the hell is going on with the Vatican just not doing what it's supposed to do. And he's saying very senior members of the clergy are basically normalizing homosexuality and gay relationships. And he obviously doesn't agree with me with it about it. He doesn't agree with it, and he's not gay. I seem to remember him talking about his sons, or well, he's got offspring anyway, and being fed a daily diet of his, what the fuck is going on kind of series of streams. It just seems that it's intensifying, and really, it's clear to me what has happened. The powers that be are weaponizing Christianity. And what will happen now is that they're going to use everything about Christianity to control these, lots of people. That they're going to use sexy porn stars who say they've become Christian, and in that way attract men to Christianity. And I guess in the hope of the boring proper religions who want to segregate the sexes, well, they won't have a look in when Christianity, with all its pomp and circumstance, especially the Roman Catholic Church, which is full of good showmanship, these Muslims and these Jews just don't stand a chance. And this is what I think they're doing. It's their last hurrah. And I'm just telling you all that you really need to keep your eye on the ball, because this is what is happening. They're going to make the Catholic Church support the policies of Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you're not the attentive kind of person, not an analytical sort of person, you won't notice, and you'll think, oh, things are getting better. The church is getting cooler, hipper, more normal and reflecting of contemporary culture. And this is what you want it to be. And I'm saying a lot of contemporary culture is morally and intellectually rotten, and nobody will say a thing about it. And the people capable of being social media influencers are being attracted away, by doing well on the stock market, uh, being given, being invited to apply for jobs in the New York Times, that sort of thing. So they'll be using the concentrated array of Western media on distance. And I'm just telling you, I'm not going to be bribed by their corrupt nonsense, though I see quite a lot of my associates are falling for it. They see things in the short term. They are basically atheists and see life as to be enjoyed and bribes to be accepted. And nobody is bribing me. However, the divine narrative is really the most powerful narrative of all, particularly if it is also reflected in history, reality, logic, and morality. And it is really the easiest thing to call out the idolatry of Christianity, and there is no way they can deny it. Um, my only problem is cowardly Jews and cowardly Muslims who don't want to join me in denouncing the idolatry of the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church or the Christian monarch whose kingdom they happen to be living in. Well, somebody's got to do it, and I will continue to do it. And I'm not afraid of offending these Christians who obviously have no principles, because they don't care to obey the Ten Commandments, which forbid idolatry and blasphemy, and they can't deny the narrative that Jesus was executed for blasphemy, which means that they worship an executed blasphemer. And fundamentally, they're just pretending to be stupider than they already are in order to ignore their moral imperative. And I'm saying everyone has a moral imperative, because everyone who understands morality or thinks they understand morality will know that it is about things they should or shouldn't do. And no one who has heard of the Ten Commandments can deny that the Ten Commandments forbid idolatry and blasphemy. But these Christians cannot deny that there appear to be idols of Jesus and Mary in lots of churches in the world. So I guess the only thing they can do is pretend it doesn't matter, or that it is illiberal and rude to point these things out. But, well, idols are idols, and Christians are Christians, and blasphemers are blasphemers, and hypocrites are hypocrites. So I can see one last hurrah in getting all the social media influencers that we like, even if we don't completely trust them, to work for the New York Times or whatever. I'm talking about jobs in legacy media, I suppose I should call it, on a newspaper. I do remember some years ago I was given to understand that if I abandoned all my principles, I would get a nice job on the Daily Mail. And I said no. And it was very close to Christmas too. So it's up to people, really, and it really is up to English speaking people. Though, of course, technically, non English speaking people who claim to believe in the Abrahamic God could get involved. Because the divine narrative, the classical divine narrative that I am proposing is just makes a lot of sense, and anybody who claims to believe in God will easily understand that whether they take it seriously or not, idolatry is forbidden, and they can also easily understand that whether they like or dislike Christians, or even if they're Christians themselves, they would have to accept that Christians do appear to be worshipping idols of Jesus and Mary. And they would have to conclude that Christians are incapable of understanding the concept of idolatry, or they want to ignore the fact that Christianity is idolatry. And they wish to continue ignoring it because they are fundamentally atheists who lie even to themselves. Perhaps they are so corrupt and dishonest because since the 4th century, their ancestors have been forced to believe in this life. Their ancestors since the 4th century have been forced to believe in lies by their absolute monarch, and they want to continue believing that it's all perfectly in order, to be told nonsense and threatened with death if you question it. And this is really the history of white people, which they will find very hard to accept. But how can they deny it? They just can't. Does it matter? Some might argue that white people, not all white people, believe in this nonsense, but then do liberals and atheists, do they believe in anything? Have they got any principles? And the answer is no. And since they have no convictions and no shared beliefs or shared values, they will keep fighting each other until their civilization completely breaks down. I just don't see what else would happen as Europe declines and is under the spell of two warmongering, wicked women who really don't care about the Europeans they're supposed to lead. There's only Viktor Orban who says halfway sensible things, but he's only one. In theory, just one European leader could be saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore, and we reject the oppression of the American hegemon, and you can try and do a Maduro on me if you want, but we're not going to hand our European sovereignty to you on a plate anymore. We will start governing in our national interest. And all it takes is one courageous European leader, preferably English speaking, to tell Uncle Sam to go jump in the lake, to sling his hook. But they won't do that. Of course they won't, because they're cowards. And too corrupt to think of doing anything that might be useful to the people they presume to govern. So I guess it's not going to happen, but Europeans should ask themselves why they have sunk to such a such a swamp of confusion and corruption. And I'm saying it's because they don't have a religion, and they can't say it's Christianity because Europeans have been trying to vomit out Christianity from their system since, I would say, since the English Revolution, the English Civil War, the English Republic, followed by the American Revolution, followed by the French Revolution, followed by the Russian Revolution, which were all rejections of absolute monarchy. Muslims don't understand that either, because a lot of them say, oh, it's so nice to live in Jordan or wherever. But I'm saying it's not safe for your rights if you live under an absolute monarchy. Because the whole idea of being a monarch is that you have the power to sign death warrants and throw people in jail without, even if they haven't broken any law. And this is what is routinely done now. And nobody cares, and nobody argues about it. And the Americans I speak to, do they even know what's happening? Or are they keener to remain willfully blind and think that as long as they cling to their Christianity, they will be clinging to some important aspect of their identity? But what's so great about being an Aztec priest, really? Why pretend to believe in an absurdity just because generations of your ancestors have been told to believe in the same thing? And I'm sure there will be many, 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 many of them who would rather die than admit that their ancestors have been lied to since the 4th century and forced to believe in a religion that would end them up in hell, because it is actually compulsory idolatry and blasphemy. Imagine having a king that forces you to adopt a religion that will end him up in hell and you in hell as well, because you are forced to follow his religion. Because if you didn't, then you would be burnt at the stake. And this is the burnt and bloody history of Christianity that apparently lots of apparently quite nice, white, educated, middle-class people want to cling to. They only do it because they have their unacknowledged racism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And this is encouraged by the Jews who speak to them, who are too afraid to tell them what they really think of Christianity. So that is the problem. So thank you, Assad, for your comment that they'd still rather lose everything due to their ego rather than use their reason and logic. But their brains are already fried with nonsense, so they are practically brain dead. Well, today I've been asked all the usual questions like, well, didn't you know that England was Christian when you arrived? And yes, of course I knew. But so I did kind of attend a few church services. I took an interest in Christianity. I've certainly visited a whole bunch of churches and cathedrals. So I am aware of Christian culture and Christian architecture and Christian art. But the point is, these are just the accessories of religion. The real the only evidence of a religion being followed is cannot be seen, cannot be found in cathedrals and music and stained glass and hymn books. It can only be found by obedience to the law. So you wouldn't expect a fully obedient country, whether it be Judaism or Islam, to not be breaking God's laws. But as I started off talking about Michael Lofton, I think his name is, of Reason and Theology, is saying that senior priests in the Roman Catholic Church are busily normalizing gay marriages and gay relationships and gay sex. I think he'll probably be abandoning Catholicism soon. But what about the Catholics I talk to? I'm pleased to announce that next Tuesday I will be talking to E. Michael Jones again, and this time he will be telling us about the Great Awakening in America. And apparently there are 3 of them when Americans feel the urge to be religious and gather in fields and mass movements to make their religious feelings clear. What is so dangerous about allowing your corrupt and incompetent ruling classes to keep making up the rules as they go along? Well, there could be starting wars in your name, and when it actually blows up, well, it could blow up in your face, it could result in failed states, your power outages, internet censorship, or even the absence of Wi-Fi. So it's something to be contemplated. We already know that the government thinks nothing of its own people. In fact, it wants cheap immigrant labor to replace the lazy white people who are too busy claiming benefits to do a good day's work. And I know even white nationalists complain that you'd never be able to survive as a business if you only used white indigenous labor. And I suppose it's not that much of a mystery that no anti-immigration political party is discussing the problem of a labor shortage. In fact, a lot of these people I talk to actually deny that there is a labor shortage because it suits them to do so. I mean, I do ask, who's going to pick the fruit? Who's going to slaughter the cattle and or deliver the roux? If all the non-whites who weren't born British disappeared in a puff of smoke, and of course there is no answer, because they'll blame the Jews. But I detect movement, but I can't tell if it's going in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. I'm not budging about secular Quranism. I'm relieved that a few people are now able to discuss it, doubtless with mockery and disapproval. But that's okay. I'm used to dealing with people who hate my ideas, disagree with me, and I'd actually prefer them to say why and how my idea is not going to work, even if implemented. And I'm saying it would be the easiest thing to implement them after a publicity campaign to explain why it is absolutely necessary for the West to remoralize itself in order to maintain its moral and political leadership. Some people may say that it is lost beyond recovery. I just need people to discuss these ideas with, and I think they are afraid to let me speak, much less engage with me. I am still finding the terribly disappointing tactics that are used against me, not wanting to discuss things, not wishing to engage, not wanting to take the subject further, because I guess it is taboo. It is taboo to challenge the current political orthodoxy. But I know it's going to be denounced sooner or later. I might as well start the denunciation and give the reasons. And you could all help me by talking about it in other live chats and in real life. And this is how the word spreads. And once people know that we are in the overwhelming majority, then they'll just start giving us what we want. It's so easy. In theory. So really the most important thing is that men should be men and not fear to speak, and women, well, if they want to argue, they should be able to argue. But even if they cry and have tantrums, men should not give way to them. And that's really the only way to reorder Western civilization. It's the only way, through statements, announcements, conversations, discussions, conclusions, and resolutions.